Okay, here we are on part 4 of 5 in this video series. This article was created from the questions referenced in our last video. Only this time, two of our local outspoken elected officials were interviewed for the Ottawa Herald. Let's recap and continue. Judd Wheel contacted me a few months ago in a form of damage control after the Facebook commentary by our group's supporters caused the Ottawa Herald reporter to feel the heat following the Orion Love Fest article published in early August. After we answered questions regarding our opposition to Orion's plans to use Franklin County as some sort of industrial solar factory for the entire Southwest power pool, the editor asked a few questions to our friends in the Kansas House of Representatives. He asked, as legislators, what are your concerns about a California-based solar company moving in on Kansas? Are you worried about financial consequences on Franklin County residents and Kansans because of this development? And if so, what kind? And do you see a compromise with Orion? If so, what do you have in mind? Mr. Wheel gave us the questions in advance and allowed us the time to write a well thought out answer and respond back to him by email. Featured in this piece is Representative Carrie Barth of the Kansas House District 5. She currently holds office and she is seeking re-election this fall. And also Representative Rebecca Schmoy of Kansas District 59. She is also currently in office and also currently seeking re-election. Let's start with Representative Barth. She opted out of a Q&A in favor of writing a direct statement. We deal in transparency here, so we opted to release her entire statement verbatim. Representative Barth said, I have many concerns about industrial scale wind and solar projects. To start, there's no FEMA regulations or protections. There's no SEMA regulations or protections and no Kansas Department of Health and Environmental regulations or protections. And the only EPA regulation is how to dispose of the solar panels. This led me to write a budget proviso in 2023 that was for a comprehensive third-party study concerning the effects to health and environment for wind turbines and solar arrays. This budget proviso passed the Kansas House Agriculture and Natural Resources Budget Committee and failed with only 8 votes in the House Appropriations Committee. The lack of this study on health and the environment has helped counties like Harvey County, Kansas, ban these types of industrial projects and can be used in Franklin County. In the Kansas state capitol this year, we focused on reliable energy that is readily dispatchable and meets baseload needs. Wind and solar energy are intermittent and do not meet these reliable energy standards. Franklin County and its residents rely on energy to run their businesses, keep the hospital running to take care of patients, for household operations, etc. Wind and solar have not been sufficient in serving community essential needs due to their lack of reliability. Thank you, Representative Carrie Barth, Kansas House, District 5. Representative Schmoy took the Q&A approach. The question was, as legislators, what are your concerns about a California-based solar company moving in on Kansas? She said, my concern is not about this being proposed and implemented by an out-of-state corporation. Whether it's a Kansas-based company or California is the least of my concerns. My concern is entirely on the predatory nature of the contracts being used as well as the infringement on property owners' rights which accompany these land acquisitions. The environmental impacts to the surrounding landowners' rights are also a concern. Next question is, do you see a compromise with Orion? And if so, what do you have in mind? She said, Orion the company is neither my adversary nor business partner. I am not interested in a compromise or a battle between elected officials and any energy company. My first and foremost concern is and always will be protecting the individual from predatory contracts and protecting personal property rights from anyone, any corporation, or any government entity which would infringe upon the rights of the individual. And finally, are you worried about financial consequences on Franklin County residents and Kansans because of this development? And if so, what kind? She said, I'm concerned about the impact these developments have on local property tax, the use of condemnation of privately owned land in order to push eminent domain upon property owners, the cost to the county to build and maintain any infrastructure needed for the development, the cleanup costs should a natural disaster such as a fire or tornado occur at the development site, and the long-term cost of losing agricultural opportunities in our area. I am also concerned by financial impact that this development could have on the individuals who own property adjacent to or in the area of the development. the valuations of their property, the resale value of their property, and the environmental impact to their property should all be considered when we discuss potential consequences. The financial aspect is incredibly important. However, more important by far is the fact that the current property owners in the area have bought this property for various reasons with many different ideas on what they use their land for today as well as in the future. The financial aspect pales in comparison to the landowner who bought their property in order to create a home for generations of their family to use and enjoy. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, let's see what was actually published. With the possibility of Franklin County approving the development of Orion Renewable Energy's expansive Prairie Sunlight project, Kansas House Representative for District 59, Rebecca Schmoy, and Representative for District 5, Carrie Barth, both voiced their concerns about the development. Representative Schmoy said her concern is not about the Prairie Sunlight project being proposed and implemented by an out-of-state corporation. They quoted her correctly there. Orion has stated that extensive care is taken in explaining the provision of their lease agreements in regards to the months and sometimes years it takes to negotiate and execute a lease agreement with a landowner. Orion added that the company encourages all landowners to engage attorneys to represent them during the negotiation process before they execute agreements. Okay. They touched on more of Representative Schmoy's concerns. Orion responded in the past that the project's facilities, if fully built, would occupy less than 1% of the current farm ground in Franklin County. Solar panels will be located on private land where the landowners and farmers decide the best use of their land. I'll get back to that. Furthermore, unlike other types of development, when the project is decommissioned, the land is expected to return to its pre-project condition. We're also discussing with interested parties that want to use the land within the project for agricultural purposes during operations, such as for grazing, said Alicia Smith, Prairie Sunlight Project Manager. Smith also said that Orion has not condemned land and does not have a right to condemn land or use eminent domain. Landowners participating in the project are doing so voluntarily. All right, first let's get back to the best use of their land. When I spoke to Al Germain, who's part of the C-suite for Orion when they came here for the open house in March, he did inform me that if it's not clearly written into the lease, it does become Orion's prerogative to decide ultimately what they want to do with their leased land. Anything other than that is just a handshake agreement. He used the term handshake agreement. And back to the final part here, Orion has not condemned land and does not have a right to condemn land. However, Orion does not manage these projects after they've been built. Most of the time, they don't even manage the projects after they've been approved. They're sold to another company, and in this case, we've been told by multiple landowners that that project is Evergy. Now, Evergy does have rights, and I'll go over those later on in this video. Okay, since so far it seems that our representatives are being quoted correctly, I'm going to just kind of gloss over all of that and jump into Orion's responses because Orion has a response to everything. So when they went over the financial aspect and the adjoining properties and whatnot, Orion stated the project will pay tens of millions of dollars in property taxes over its operational life. The county and its taxpayers are not responsible for paying for any improvements to accommodate the project. Any necessary improvements or repairs for the project, including to public roads, will be paid for by the project. The project is financially responsible for any damage caused to the project or by the project, and like any other power plant, the project will maintain appropriate insurance coverage during construction and operations, said Alicia Smith. And thank you, Alicia, for finally calling it a power plant and not a farm. Representative Schmoy said Orion is neither her adversary nor her business partner. And then, again, she was quoted correctly. We already know where our representatives stand. Right now, we're kind of just figuring out where Orion wants to rebut on these and what the publication has chosen to print. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that you have the ability to read this entire article because, honestly, I'm going to skim over a lot of it. Carrie was not misrepresented when she spoke either. Pretty much everything is what the representatives had stated previously. And because Orion had to have their say, while FEMA does not have regulatory authority over renewable power generation facilities, and the EPA is typically involved with fossil fuel power plants and their emissions, Orion stated that there are various county, state, and federal regulations that apply to a solar project. Prairie Sunlight will comply with and often exceed all applicable regulations necessary to construct and operate the project, said Alicia Smith. Smith added that the Prairie Sunlight project will not generate any emissions or pollution. Again, we know where our representatives stand. Orion's response is different. They say no electric generation resource operates 24/7, 365 days a year. Baseload resources such as coal, nuclear, and natural gas plants have extensive shutdown periods for regular annual maintenance, and they experience shutdowns for unanticipated maintenance that can last days or weeks or months at a time, said Smith. Utilities and electric grid operators and regulators anticipate this and plan appropriately by sourcing their generation resources across diverse geographies and technologies. So it sounds like they agree. They just don't want to admit that they agree. Anyway, solar is said to further diversify the mix of technologies on the grid and provide a low-cost, emissions-free source of generation that is not subject to fluctuating fuel prices. Orion is sure that grid operators are adept in managing multiple types of power generation sources. For example, in the Southwest Power Pool, which includes Kansas, 37% of the electricity generated in 2023 came from wind energy. This is greater than the share of electric generation which came from coal and from natural gas. They didn't cite nuclear because we've got the Wolf Creek power plant and they don't really have that fit into their narrative. But Smith cited that according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration in 2023, nearly half of Kansas's electricity came from renewable energy. It is clear that grid operators and utilities know how to deal with a variety of power generation sources, said Smith. Before we wrap up here, I just wanted to go over one little thing from the Evergy website. What if Evergy can't come to an agreement with property owners? Fortunately, that's a rare occurrence. Evergy will make every effort to reach negotiated agreements. Evergy may exercise the right of eminent domain to obtain an easement after exhausting attempts through negotiations with a landowner. Again, Orion does not manage these projects. They sell them off. And in all likelihood, Evergy will be the end user. Evergy has the right of eminent domain to obtain an easement. Okay, the good news is what the representative said was pretty much what was published. It was very convenient that Orion was given a shot at rebutting pretty much everything negative that was said about them, but yet we were not given the opportunity to rebut everything positive that they said about themselves. However, that's what happens when you no longer have a local publication in your hometown. The Ottawa Herald is now owned by Cherry Road Media out of New Jersey. They own lots of small papers in 17 states. Unfortunately, gone are the days when the local small town news reporter knew all of the names and the stories of all of the hometown people. And when something predatory would try to invade our small town, well, these are the times we really do miss the local paper covering it.